Welcome to Red and Yellow, the podcast about all things to do with refereeing at grassroots level, looking at the laws of football, speaking to guests, and trying to help you become a better referee, with Adam Humphreys and me, Ed Connell.
Hello, it's Adam here, and welcome to this episode of Red or Yellow. I just wanted to jump on here before the episode started and remind you to send us your questions about anything refereeing, and that way we can hopefully help you improve your game, as well as help all of the listeners improve their games as well. The best place to send us your question is via our loyal listener WhatsApp community, which you can join by clicking the link in the show notes, or send us an email or find us on social media. It's at Red or Yellow Pod. Added to that, please subscribe to the podcast, and that way our meandering chats about refereeing will magically appear on your phone whenever we release a new episode. And lastly, all views expressed on this podcast are that of myself, Adam Humphreys, and not that of Football Queensland. Now that's all done, let's get on with the show. Well, hello, Edward. How are you?
I'm very well, Adam. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you very much. It's been a little while because you've been jet setting and things, haven't you?
I have been away. That is true to say. Although,
Wait. No one is surprised.
yeah, I'm sure they're not. But it's been a legitimate trip away because it's all related to football. I've been away refereeing.
Excellent.
I was refereeing at the Gay World Club Football Championships in Buenos Aires, which was very, very exciting. It was a great trip, and the reasons why it was particularly exciting is that there are two reasons really. Firstly, the Argentinian FA were giving their support to this tournament, which, for those people that know about sort of issues concerning LGBTQ plus rights in South America, particularly in Argentina, that's a very significant move on the part of the footballing authorities. So that was very, very exciting.
That's fantastic news.
And secondly, it has, for the first time, support, primarily financial support, from FIFA, which is a real considerable step to have an event like that being recognised by the world's governing body of football. And they had a FIFA rep who was there for a few days of the tournament. But yeah, there are a few interesting things that have come out of it, actually. The first is the referees came from the UK. There was myself, my friend Alex, that you know as well, who's one of the directors of the FA. Ryan Atkin was out there from the UK as well.
What an elite group of referees from the UK that got sent out.
What an elite!
I bet you felt well out of your depth.
I was about to say that those names just trip off the tongue quite naturally and being the same sort of group of quality referees. But thanks for
basically. It was two referees and Ed.
Wow! Oh, blimey! That's nice. Lovely to see you again after about.
I know. You're a dear friend.
And so that was good. Then we had, and what made it really interesting was that there were then referees from the US, referees from Europe, mainland Europe, referees from South America. And so it was just really interesting to see other types of refereeing styles, just to see how people conduct themselves on the pitch, how they use the whistle, how much they chat to players, etc. And as you might expect, there's quite a lot of variation between the different countries, and also just sort of different ways in which we ref. I mean, we're all applying the same laws of football, but for some referees, technical offences are not so important. And yeah, so that was fascinating. The other thing that I found absolutely fascinating was I was speaking to some of the US referees about the refereeing they do over there. And the ones who are there all refereeing at a pretty good level. They're refereeing at college level. So they're refereeing sort of university and college level football.
Yeah.
And as most people I'm sure will know, there's a lot of investment goes into sort of US sport. And although sort of the sports that attract most of the money, such as American football, baseball, basketball, they get a lot of the money. And a lot of the money also trickles down to the other sports as well. So football is pretty well funded, or soccer for them. And so people who ref in those leagues are getting paid good money. I mean, per game for being either an assistant or in the center, they're getting up to $400 a game
Wow.
plus travel.
That's
Yeah,
almost worth you.
exactly.
That's almost worth you flying to New York just to
It's
do a game and to come home again, right?
I mean, it's mad. They're getting really, really well paid, and that's in addition to travel. And obviously, some of them have to travel quite some big distances because
Mm.
obviously, given the geography of America, which I found quite astonishing. And the final interesting thing was, because there's obviously a lot of this money in football gets invested into facilities over there.
Mm.
A lot of them are kind of doing a bit of having video review stuff as
Oh,
well.
right. That's good. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, not VAR in the sense that we understand it to be, but there are camera setups and they
Right.
will
Oh, wow.
be able to review things as well. So yeah, really interesting.
That's cool.
But all in all, it was a good trip. I, however, managed to injure myself on day one, which wasn't so great.
Is that why all I saw of you was pictures of you drinking, what are they, Caprianas on the beach? What are they called?
What's that called?
Caprianas? What's that cocktail?
Yeah,
You'll know.
Caprinias.
Caprinas. There we go.
I was drinking Caprinias, but that was in Rio on the way to Argentina.
Oh, sorry, darling. I'm so sorry to get that wrong.
But no, I took it. I was a bit worried because I felt a ping in my calf, which generally is an indication
Oh,
of
calves,
a
calves.
tear. It's really annoying for me because I've never had sort of muscle strains like that or injuries like that. But
Mm,
I'm pretty confident that I had a small tear, so I had to take a couple of days out, rest it. In an ideal world, I wouldn't have gone back to reffing for the rest of that week, but
mm,
obviously, as you might appreciate, there wasn't an abundance of referees there, so it was a bit of difficult to not do anything. But
mm.
so yeah, so I came back and did some of the games towards the end of the week. But yeah, there we go. So that's where I've been.
So what did you actually
And
learn in terms of technical skill, in terms of, did you pick up any golden nuggets that you want to share with the listeners?
well, I don't want to sound too boring because I've gone on about this before, and I also don't want to make Ryan feel any more big-headed than he actually is. But I've said for more. I said before, these events for me are kind of invaluable because it's an opportunity for me to talk about reffing, learn about reffing from people that are, doing it at a much higher level than me,
Mm,
and um, I'm not sure there's any sort of golden nugget to relay, but he was talking a lot to the American referees about positioning,
yeah,
about
okay.
what sort of the top flight referees are being taught over here in
Mm,
terms of where they should be positioning themselves on the pitch, which I kind of found interesting. But I mean, the great thing is because I was sort of spending a lot of time with him because we were sort of sharing accommodation together, traveling to and from the games. There was a lot of chat about football,
mm,
and I kind of was trying to sort of soak it up really like a bit of a sponge, just listening to all these words of wisdom, and then when I was on the pitch, trying to do my best to kind of implement them.
mm.
And yeah, no, so I'm sorry I can't sort of point to any single thing which would be of huge value to our listeners, but for me, as ever, it's just a huge steep learning curve and just sort of made me want to do a bit more refereeing when I got home, really.
I've noticed there's in terms of positioning, we're starting to move away from now, especially in more demanding football. We're starting to move away from that kind of traditional diagonal that we're used to having. So
Yeah.
traditionally, you'd run from the right side of the penalty area to the left side of the penalty area, depending on where you're going, obviously. But basically, you're running across diagonal between your assistants to make sure there's distance between you and your
Yeah,
assistant, and you're not close
exactly.
to your assistant, right? But now, obviously, because of how much faster the game's getting, because of things like short free kicks and stuff like that, like building that angle is getting harder. So I've noticed like we're starting to make the line a little squarer now, and then you make angled choices based on the positioning of the ball. So it's kind of a much more live, reactive sort of system. You still need to work away from your assistant, not towards your assistant, to the best of your ability. But like originally, the angle was that kind of diagonal was all about making sure that you always got you, then the ball, then your assistant, and that's the point of that. Whereas squaring it up, like now we're kind of teaching people to try and find a live angle based on just make a choice and find an angle, as opposed to you sticking rigidly to that diagonal, so that really you're not losing so much proximity to
Yeah.
the incidents. So yeah, I've noticed that, and that's definitely something that's coming down from elite levels, slowly but surely. But I mean, to those listening, I would still say that if you are working with assistants, my aim is always to still stay on the diagonal, but then feel a lot more comfortable coming off it, as opposed to just ignoring it completely. Like the diagonal
Yeah.
should be your starting point, and like in a perfect world where you're fast enough, you're fit enough, and you can cover the if in a perfect world we stick to that. But in a real world, just feel comfortable stepping off of it and just making sure you're building angle around any incident you need, as opposed to like yeah, running away from what's going on.
And I've forgotten sort of what a delight it is to, referee with the benefit of, you know, high level assistance. I mean, it
Mm,
does make the job of refereeing so much easier when
yeah.
you've got sort of a high level assistant referee who
Mm,
you can trust and, who's got an eye on that sort of part of the pitch for you. It makes your job as a referee so much easier. And I don't often get that luxury. I usually got club assistants, so sort of my
mm,
heat map is sort of on my regular sort of Sunday morning football is kind of all over the place. Whereas there's a distinct diagonal shape to it on
mm,
the heat map when I'm sort of refereeing these tournaments.
mm.
And it's just nice to sort of referee with sort of buzzer flags. That makes life, I mean, a whole load easier. I still haven't had a go at comms yet. But yeah, it kind of reinvigorates me when I go on these trips. It kind of makes me sort of want to referee more.
Well, yeah. I mean, I when we was in Italy, I really enjoyed it, and like I'd retired at that point, and it was the only
Yeah,
refereeing I'd done in 2 years was coming to that trip, and it kind of reinvigorated me, like meeting all of those people and enjoying the situation. Although I was petrified the whole week I was going to die of heat stroke, but it was it. They're like going away to a tournament with referees in a social setting, but with varied abilities and just mutual respect with everyone without any competition. Because whenever I've done kind
yeah,
of tournaments for the FA and things like that, you're kind of always going hoping you're going to be the one that impresses, so that you get looked upon favorably, you won the final, etc., etc. Whereas in kind of like a social situation, a social tournament like that, it's kind of nice, and you can all relax, and you're in a much more kind of open-minded, educational situation
yeah.
than necessarily going to a kind of
I
a traditional
I
tournament.
couldn't agree more. It was so lovely because, I should have. I did sort of the third, fourth place playoff for the one of the men's competitions on sort of finals day in a sort of nice, I don't know, 7,000 capacity stadium. And I was in the middle. And then I had as my two assistants two senior referees who referee sort of senior university college level in the US. And, I know they're very, very good. And it should have been intimidating for me, but it wasn't because
Mm,
I knew that at the end of the game or even at the, half time with water breaks, I was going to get constructive feedback, and they were delighted and sort of happy to be refereeing for me, even though they knew full well that I was sort of bottom of the rung in terms of referees in the UK, and they're quite serious and high up in the US. But yeah, it's a really sort of nice environment in which to be reffing, and you just learn so much from watching other people. I mean, what was interesting is obviously on a couple of occasions I was teamed up with referees that didn't speak any English and
mm,
I didn't speak any Spanish,
hmm
and that was a challenge
mm.
because your assistant flags something and you go over to them and you sort of have to have a bit of sort of my acting skills came to the fore. We have a bit of role play explaining what you'd seen. Um, and it's also quite difficult refereeing sort of South American teams who speak Spanish.
Very different
But
culture as well, isn't it?
it's very different culture, but it's also very interesting to that you can referee without being able
Mm.
to chat to players. You'd be surprised how much just sort of general body language and use of the whistle and things like that
You
can
can't you
convey the message.
I learned this in Italy when we was in Rome. And because obviously that was the European Games, right? The same kind of federation, but European version of it. And I knew there'd be lots of different nationalities there. And I think one day I was given from like the French team versus the Spanish team or something, or maybe the Italian team. And like the night before or that day, whenever I got the appointment, I remember sitting on Google Translate and just going, okay, what keywords do I need to know in their language?
Precisely.
And
Yeah.
like I just learned easy. Like my French is okay. Like I can speak very basic school French, like enough to disarm a French person and enough to just make them know that I can break the ice with them, but that's about as far as I can go, right? And so I was just looking up keywords like stop, easy, like be careful, like kind of phrases like that I need, like
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we did.
key man management phrases. And I just kept repeating them and repeating them and repeating them and repeating them to myself. I'd then refresh my mind on it at half time. But I'd also go in and I'd just do whatever I could. So the little Spanish I do know, like, even if like even now when I come across a Spanish player, I'll just say hola like that. And they'll be like, oh, what? And then I would come and stay. And just by doing that, completely neutralizes them and they don't expect it. And it's amazing how much buy-in you get from that one player when you do something like that. Um, and I remember the French team in Rome, they were so grateful that I was just trying my best to help them in French as much as I could. And it's amazing how much easier the game's got because of it. It's
Yeah.
stunning. Just, a couple of phrases is all you need. And
I mean, we did that with Spanish. You just need to know, like you say, you know, take it easy
yep,
or no more, or just simple
yep,
phrases are
steady.
enough to help. Yeah, exactly, to
Yep.
help you get through. I also had my first experience of being on the men's Division One final, being the fourth official,
Oh
which
yeah.
I've never been a fourth
Did you get
official
a little
before.
bored?
I didn't get a little bored,
Oh, what's
but
Ryan
but
playing at? He should have got you a
I did
board.
I did have Ryan uh, sat beside me, talk me through it all, and I loved it. It was really good actually.
Those
And
boards
I
are those
hadn't.
boards are harder to work than you think, I tell you. They're not
Well,
easy. Like first time you get given one, you're like, what the hell? And whenever someone's never been trained in it and they go out, they're like, I'll be fine. I know they're going to make a mistake, and they always do. So here's a word of warning: if you ever get a subs board, make sure you practice it before you head out.
but yeah, no, it was really, really good. And in fact, you sort of asked me about any sort of tips I picked up from Ryan. I'm just thinking of a couple that come to mind. But one is, lots of referees kind of want to assert their authority in a game. They want to make everybody know that they're in charge, and so there'll be an infringement, and the referee will stand on their spot and they don't budge an inch, and they're sort of saying, "No, I'm not moving. Come to me, come to me." And Ryan just made a really simple point because I think I've done that in the past when I've been
Mm,
annoyed by a player's conduct. I sort of
mm.
thought, hold on, I'm in charge here. You're going to come over to me. And it was just a really simple tip that he gave me, which was, there's no need to do that. There's no need to sort of make it confrontational.
Mm.
You call them over to you, but you also start walking towards them.
Yep.
So sort of mutual coming together. And it just diffuses the situation,
Mm.
doesn't make it all about, I'm in charge and you're not.
Hmm.
And I just thought, really simple things like that are really helpful.
That
And I
was
also,
that was something I learned quite early on because I used to be a bit like that. I used to try and make them always come to me. I'd stand my
yeah,
ground because obviously
I know I've
I
done that in the
tower over
past.
people, right? And I hold space well. So yeah, and then I had an assessor say, look, you're making a guy like if it's a centre back and they run away after the foul, like you're making someone run or walk 40 yards. Like that's gonna annoy them. Just close the space as well. Just mutually
Yeah.
close the space, or bring them into a neutral space. So you walk an angle to a different point, they then walk an angle to a different point, and then you're both putting in the same amount of effort. And it's such an important little trick. There's a time for it, and there's a time for being authoritative and standing your ground. But the standing your ground is more when they're standing their ground as well, and you're both already in close proximity to each other.
Yeah.
But even then, sometimes backing away and asking them to come with you can help as well. You kind of have to read every situation of its own, but that is such an important piece of advice, and I'm so
Yeah.
glad I learnt that when I was younger.
Well, no one's ever told me that before, and I
No.
know in the past I've been that referee I'm not budging. The game's not going on until you've come to me,
Yep.
and I think, and that probably part of it stems from my professional career, where kind of when I say something, it happens, and I'm not used to sort of having to be conciliatory. But it was just simple things like that you little nuggets like that, which I came away from thinking, you know what, that will make me a better referee in future. And
It's funny, isn't it? Because I think so much of our referee training and so much of like what we think will make us a better referee is getting better at identifying fouls, getting better at understanding what sanction
yeah,
goes where, understanding all of this stuff. But I tell you, so much of my refereeing ability comes from my ability to man manage and comes from my ability of having learned these lessons real quick, real fast, early on, and listening to that advice and implementing it as fast as I could. And 9 times out of 10, people appreciate, like, you might get a key decision wrong and people will focus on that, but they focus far less on that if you get so much more of the man management right because they accept your humanity in the key decisions. Key decisions are important, but it's amazing how much more leeway and how much more trust you get from players when you implement these things. It's so important, man management, and
and
I don't think we
I,
focus on it anywhere near enough.
well, I get the impression that when you get to sort of Ryan's level, he's sort of national, what do they call it now, national panel or whatever
Mm,
for referees, that I think they are focusing more on that because it's kind of a
mm,
given that you're going to know the laws of football.
yeah.
And it's the next step as to how you conduct yourself on the pitch, I think, is the
Mm,
sort of the key skills they're imparting. But
mm,
listen, all this chat just makes me thinking more that I need to get Ryan on as a guest because uh,
uh,
I love chatting to him about refereeing,
mm.
and I think he's got so much sort of wisdom to impart. And I will redouble my efforts to get him on as a
We
guest.
definitely do. We definitely need an interview with Ryan and Alex
Yeah.
and everyone else we keep talking about. Excellent. So, what other updates have we got to run people through? Just briefly, now we've done Ed's extensive travel log. Do we need to put in the dates next time you're away next week?
I'm not away for a little while actually, Adam.
Oh,
So we're
what
okay.
what
We can
frustrates me
mention them
about
all.
that is the surprise in your voice.
And disappointment. But
Yeah,
I'm
quite.
yeah, no, I'm in the country for the foreseeable future. But so that's all good. We should say about before we came online and record our podcast this evening, we were both embroiled in giving fitness advice on our WhatsApp channels,
Yes, so just
and we
quickly, before we get into the depths of that, just quickly with the WhatsApp forum, because we're getting high levels, or not high levels of spam, but it's getting increasingly more difficult to establish whether someone is a real person or a fake person, and I keep accepting people's invites to the group, and then we get a spam message, and it's really annoying because the name is John Smith, and I'm like, well, that's a real person. So for anyone new who's listening who wants to join our WhatsApp loyal listener community, and please do because it's a fantastic little place. I've started a group called Start Here, and we just first of all just go to that group and explain to us who you are, where you referee, how you found out about the group, and whether you listen to the podcast, just so we can establish that you are indeed a real person. You're not trying to sell us stocks and shares on the US stock market.
and
Um,
that's not to say that you have to be a sort of active
no,
referee
not at all.
refing at a certain level to get involved. It's
Not at
just so
all.
we can make sure we're eliminating the bots because
The spam, yeah.
it's becoming a bit tedious when
Yeah.
people try to
Uh,
sell us pyramid schemes.
and then, and then, and then once you put that in that Start Here group, just request to join all the other groups, and I'll accept you immediately. Like it's not like we're trying to make it elite or anything like that. It is literally, I just didn't want the community getting annoyed about all the spam messages that keep coming in, despite our best efforts. And there just seems to be no other way of filtering through people. So please don't be annoyed that we're asking you to jump through that first step, but it's important for the sanctity of the community.
But it is a great community because, as we've said before, often people come to there with their problems, and other people sort of help work out the solution or direct you as to what the answer is in the laws or give you some tips, advice. It's a really, really lovely environment. And just as Adam and I were waiting to come online to our appointed time, there was some chat in the fitness one about people talking about injuries, about difficulties they're having so far as training, and they managed to get the rare opportunity to get the wisdom of both Adam and myself with our
At the same moment.
vast experience. It doesn't happen very often that we're both online at the same time and getting involved, but it's a really, really wholesome community. And so, yeah, make sure you come and join us on there if you can.
Yeah.
I think the rest of the podcast, Adam, is going to be taken up by, I think, principally
Wait. Before we do that, can we just quickly talk about the blog post I've released?
Of course we can.
Excellent, because I know once we get talking about the next topic, we won't get off it. So just quickly, I released, so in Queensland here, we're kind of off season, getting ready for pre-season, and we released sort of fitness test dates, and we all know when we've got to do the fitness test, of which I'm training intensely for at the moment, and my body is screaming at me for it. But I decided to write a little blog on how to pass the fitness test and how to attempt the fitness test, because they've changed it from the dynamic yo-yo now to the FIFA fitness test, the FIFA interval test, which is like a 25-meter walk, 75-meter sprint, and you have to do that repetitively 40 times to create a 4K run. And that's preceded by 6 40-meter sprints, so you have to do in about 6.2 seconds, I think it is. So, which is a lot harder than it sounds, especially at my age. So look, if you want to have a look at that, it's on thegymstarter.com. On the blog, and it's just, or you can just Google how to pass the FIFA fitness test, and just if it's something you're facing, if it's something you're interested in, and all the audio downloads are there for the beeps and everything. And I've had some really lovely feedback about it. And just, yeah, it kind of goes into sprinting and what you need to do in order to improve your sprinting speed. And it just goes into like a little training plan that's also there to help you try and pass the FIFA fitness test if it's something you want to attempt. And honestly, I would recommend it. I also talk about my fear and worry about fitness tests myself and the anxiety they induce in me and stuff like that. So, which I think is important to acknowledge as well, because I'm the referee, or I was, still am the referee, personal trainer, and I'm not the fittest guy cardio-wise, partly because I have a congenital heart defect, but also I just don't put that much time and effort into fitness. I much prefer coaching people and helping people in that world. And so I think it's important to acknowledge, and no matter who you are, no matter what level of referee you are, I think it's good to work towards something, and it's good to get that payoff of passing, or even just getting to the start line of a fitness test and attempting it, and just knowing where you're at and trying it and doing your best. I think having a goal like that, especially in the off season, is always important because it keeps you focused. During the season, I have very little energy to train outside of that, so this is the time to really prime my body ready for an intense season. And I just think, yeah, it's good to do. So whether you're interested, whether you're not interested, whether you just want to find out about the fitness test, see what all the referees have to go through, and this is like what FIFA officials have to do, all the way down to now, like I think it's introduced at level 4 in the UK. And so yeah, and it's just a guide on fitness tests and what to do and how to pass them.
Excellent. Good. Well, I'm sure that'd be a great use to people who are coming up with their fitness test either in Australia or going to be doing it later on for next season in the UK. So,
Right.
for those who are listening to the last pod, you know that we're in the middle of dealing with the considerations that the Australia football have published, and which US football has published. In fact, many of the football associations have published, which are really, really helpful. And we've had a lot of feedback saying that it's really, really good to talk through it. But I think tonight we're probably not going to deal with any of those. So those of you who are like tuned in thinking, oh God, I hope we're going to talk about handball considerations. I don't think we are. I think that's going to be next week's podcast. And the simple reason for that is that there's been two fairly considerable news items since we last recorded. One very recently, and one that's happened in the last few weeks. And those two things are firstly the David Coote issue in the UK, the Premier League referee. And then the second one, which I'm going to suggest we talk about first, Adam, is FIFA's press releases and information they've been sharing with everybody about the football video support system. How much do you know about the football video support system, Adam?
Nothing.
Well, It's always nice to know my co-host has got his finger on the pulse of refereeing.
I am such a good podcaster. What on earth is this? Is it similar to like
Shall I take the lead on this then, Adam?
is it similar to FIFA? Well, you could have given me a heads up that this was on the agenda, right? We had a discussion about what are we going to talk about, and then you're throwing in hand grenades like this and running away, pushing me under a bus as we go through it. So, excuse me, I always give you pre-warning on what we're going to talk about. So
Well,
don't be giving me this.
I just assumed that because it's such a
Right.
big piece of refereeing news that's taken place in the last few days, that you'd have been all over it.
You know what they say about assumptions?
What's that?
They make an ass of you and me.
Well, anyway, so let me explain to you what football video support is. Now, it's difficult to understand at the moment quite what the purpose of football video support is. The English media are reporting it as being a system which FIFA are going to introduce to replace VAR. That's how it's being reported. But my analysis of what I read is that it, in fact, isn't going to replace VAR. It's probably going to be used in association with VAR. So, apparently, a lot of the countries around the world say it's a bit unfair that some parts of the world have VAR and others don't. And the simple reason why most of these countries don't have it is the cost of it.
Yeah.
It's a cost of having officials acting as VAR people, and also the very expensive cost of installing the cameras. So, in order to try and allow the whole of the football community to enjoy a system of football review, they are trialing football video support. The aim behind it is to streamline the review system and to give coaches and managers an opportunity to review. So it's been trialed recently in sort of male and female competition by FIFA. And when they trialed it, they did it on different pitches with different camera setups. On one pitch, they had it set up with user-operated cameras, so people operating cameras and tracking the pitch. On another pitch, they used static cameras, and it sounds as though the results were pretty similar on each. Not many cameras involved. I think on one of the pitches, they were simply using one camera operator. On the static pitch, I think they were using about 4 cameras that were positioned around. Not talking sort of state of the art. We're not talking Qt tech. But the way it works is that coaches get 2 reviews. And so if something happens, and it's the similar sorts of things that VAR can review at the moment, such as red card decisions, goal or no goal, penalty, etc. If something like that happens, the coach can indicate to the 4th official that they want to review it. The referee conducts the review. So not VAR, not some other person in some random room. The referee goes over to see pitch side what the cameras can show them. Now, because there aren't huge amounts of cameras involved, sometimes the referee will go and see it. They won't be able to conclude they've made a clear and obvious error because the quality of the image or the angle is not good enough, in which case their original decision stands. But they have the opportunity to overturn their decision the way that VAR does now. And the reason why it's interesting is coaches will get 2 of those per game. If you do a review and your review is successful, you retain your 2 reviews.
So it's a bit like cricket.
It's a bit like cricket. But if you review it and your referee doesn't agree with you, you lose one of your reviews. And obviously, when you lose both reviews, you've got no more reviews left. So if there's a sort of decision later on the match which you think is outrageous, you aren't in a position to review it. Now it's the trials. Pierre Luigi Collina did a talk about it at the recent FIFA event in Bangkok, and he was explaining how it worked, how successful it's been. It seems to have worked very, very well, and they've already spoken to IFAB about it with a view to it being used. There's already rumours that it could be implemented certainly by the time of the 2026 World Cup in the USA. But as I say,
in terms of the review situation, does the coach get to watch it as well, or is it just the referee gets to review their decision?
No, I think it's just the ref.
Okay, good.
And yeah, I think it's just the referee. it's also designed so that because obviously the coaches aren't necessarily best placed to decide whether or not there should be review. So players are expected to sort of be able to, you know, give the heads up to the coach and say it in the same way
Mm.
in cricket does. I think you
Yeah.
should review it. But I'll just read through very quickly what FIFA has said about it in a sort of article they released about how it works. It's to be used only in the event of a possible clear and obvious error or serious missed incident in relation to the following scenarios. This is why it's very much like VAR.
Mm.
Goal or no goal, penalty, no penalty, direct red cards. It can't be second yellows, only
Mm.
direct reds, and mistaken identity. And it can only be used once the referee has taken a decision with waving play on being considered a decision, and a team has made a subsequent request for review. Only the team's head coach, or in their absence, a senior team official in the technical area can make the request, which must be made immediately by twirling their finger. So here we've gone from boxes of VAR to twirl
My
the finger,
goodness. God, it's
uh,
like they're going to think they're the royal family.
and then they have to give a card to the fourth official indicating what they're asking to be reviewed. And the fourth official then informs the referee of the request. And if players stopped and not restarted since incident, the referee will go to the referee review area and review the footage themselves. And if play has continued since incident, the referee will stop play once the ball is in a neutral zone so that he or she can go and replay the footage.
So
Um,
in games where this is where we have VAR, is this going
yeah.
to be implemented as well, or just the coach's review system? Will that just be implemented and then they'll refer it
Well,
to VAR?
my analysis is that this is going to be in addition to VAR.
Wow.
That's my analysis. But it's also going to be used instead of VAR in countries that can't afford to have it. So at
Mm.
least there is a form of football review
Mm.
system. But as I say, interestingly, if you look online about how this has been interpreted by the media,
Mm.
and especially the football media, the headlines are
VAR's being replaced.
FIFA to replace VAR with football video review. And I don't think that is exactly what's happening. I'm
Mm.
just going to finish reading the how it works in that document. During the review, the referee is still assisted by a review operator who's going to replay on the minute monitor whatever they can in terms of angles, cameras, speeds, etc.,
Mm.
etc. Original decision will only be changed unless it's clear evidence to show it's wrong. And obviously, because of the smaller number of cameras, it'll often be inconclusive. And the review request must be made immediately to conform to the laws of the game requirement. The decision cannot be changed once players restart after a stoppage.
Mm.
And to prevent unnecessary delays to the game while the team's head coach considers whether to make a review request. And finally, after a goal has been scored, the fourth official will then just check to make sure that there's no clear and obvious error in the goal.
And I suppose it'll only be implemented in leagues where there is a fourth official in place, right?
Yeah, I mean, you've still got to have somebody operating the footage for you and collating the information so
Mm.
that the referee can look at it and show you the footage from whatever angles they've got and whatever speeds
Mhm.
they've got.
Mhm.
Now, I would be, I mean, everybody knows I don't like VAR. I'd happily see it scrapped overnight, but I would actually be quite happy as a compromise to have this system replace VAR because,
Mm.
as we've said consistently, referees are getting the decisions right very high proportion of the times. There's only very few occasions in a game where they are getting it wrong statistically, and this system would allow that there to be some form of review.
Mm.
It wouldn't be taking up loads of time because obviously each team's only got two. And the reality is there'll be occasions when it just won't be overturned. They'll lose their
Mm.
appeal, and so they'll run out of appeals. And I kind of see this as a sort of fairly happy compromise, if I'm honest.
Mm. It's interesting. I agree. I think, yeah. I mean, it's like anything though. It's still down to interpretation, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, it is. But it's interesting. In this system, it's the referee that has to do the review.
Yeah.
So it's not somebody sat at Stockley
Yeah.
Park
They're
who's not
reviewing
on
a
the
decision if
pitch.
they feel like they got it
Who
wrong. Yeah.
absolutely, and
Yeah,
that
which I
I
think is
think
fair. And then it
is
also
I think that's
allows,
important.
yeah, and then it also allows the referee to hold his hands up and say, "Yep, nope, I got that one wrong," and it helps correct the record for that referee in that moment, and it will take away that kind of monkey on his back for the rest of the game. Or their back for the rest of the game. So I think that's important as well. I think it's probably a good step forward, actually. I think it'll be interesting to see how it develops. But yeah, probably a good step forward for all involved.
There's just one more thing I was going to say about this new system. I've had an opportunity to review again the FIFA press release, and it's quite clear from FIFA's press release this is in addition to VAR.
Mm.
And so my only concern is at the moment we've got all these delays, with VAR, which is one of
It's
the
going to
reasons
slow
why
the
I
game
hate it
down.
so much. This is going to just bring more delays. I mean,
Mm.
fans might like it because they might think that, well, if there's been a bad decision made against us, they've got an opportunity to have it reviewed, but I do worry that we're going to have more delays. I suppose that's tempered slightly by the fact that imminently we're going to have the semi-automatic VAR, which was due to come in at the international break earlier this season. It still hasn't come in. I think there's still problems with the cameras, etc., etc.
I
But
just
it's
think
imminent.
at some point you have to decide, right? Do you want much more accurate decision making, or do you want a faster game? And
Yeah.
you can't have both. So and I think generally people will care more about getting the right amount of points per game as opposed to necessarily how fast the game is played. Like in any business, in any process, a fast decision is not always the best decision. Sometimes it is,
No.
sometimes it isn't. But some decisions need a bit more careful consideration, and that's just part of decision making. So, for anyone who is worried about the game being a lot slower, um, that's just then you can't have it all, I'm afraid.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Mm.
Um. So the second newsworthy item, Adam, which I think we're kind of duty bound to talk about because if there's one topic that I've been messaged about more than any others over the last couple of weeks whilst I was away, it was the story involving the Premier League referee David Coote. And obviously, we need to be careful about what we say because this is all he's still under investigation. In fact, I think only earlier today, the PGMOL said that they were still conducting disciplinary proceedings against him.
Hmm.
So we obviously don't want to say anything that's going to prejudge what happened, but simply dealing with the facts as they appear to be at the moment. For those people that aren't aware of it, on the 11th of November, so early this month, the PGMOL, which is obviously the governing body for referees in the UK, stood him down because a video had been posted to X or Twitter as was, which appeared to show David Coote making some disparaging remarks about the then Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp.
Just on that one
Um,
second, Ed, and I hate to change the topic, but have you joined Blue Sky?
I have joined Blue Sky.
I
Yeah,
thought you'd be on Blue Sky. Yeah.
it seems that everybody's moved to Blue Sky because
Well,
of.
I'd much prefer to not endorse Mr. Musk. So yeah,
Well,
Blue Sky.
I think
I'm
that's the
on there
thing.
as
If there's
well. Yeah.
and I think I'm on there as Eskimo 28, ESCIMO 28 because my normal X handle had gone, unfortunately, even though
Oh
I was one of the
no.
early adopters.
Ah.
Um, yeah, there seems to be a general migration. I was reading a
Hmm.
statistic that I think the people that have now subscribed to Blue Sky has exceeded Threads already. I think it's something
Right, that doesn't
phenomenal
surprise me.
in
Yeah.
terms of how quickly people
Yeah.
moved over.
Yeah.
But
I go,
anyways,
wait,
so
let me give out my handle.
oh, sorry.
Goodness gracious, you're not into this marketing lark, are you? I don't like the fact there's another social media platform we're gonna have to manage. But anyway, I'm the gym starter, in case anyone's wondering. Oh, there it is. Uh, there we go. For those watching.
Excellent.
Yeah, just at the gym starter.
So
Right.
going back to our news story of that
What was he talking
social
about?
media interlude.
That
So
was a proper ADHD moment, that wasn't it?
So there's a video that appeared to show him making these disparaging remarks about Jurgen Klopp when he was the then Liverpool manager, which is obviously problematic. If they're true, it seems that initial reporting was suggesting that he was denying that that was a sort of valid video, but I think ultimately our position is that he accepts that was him. So that was what originally was being investigated. There have been, unfortunately, some other stories come to light, some more video footage, which, as I understand it, the way it's been reported, would appear to suggest some drug use, and also there also appears to have been some not only alleged drug use, but a sort of suggestion, allegation that whilst he was officiating at a game, he was sort of arranging social events at sort of half time and the like. So, understandably, it's all being investigated. I think the biggest concern for the PGMOL will be the issue about bias. I mean, it's a really important thing that referees are seen as being independent, and it's for that reason the PGMOL have always consistently not allowed referees who have an allegiance to any particular club to be involved in the refereeing of those games. So
Mm.
I can't remember which referee it is who supports Notts County, but as a consequence, he's not allowed to be involved in officiating for Notts Forest games.
I think that
And
is
there are other.
David. I think David
Is
is.
that is it him who was
Yeah,
the
he is
yeah?
declared to
So
Nottingham as a Nottingham
right,
County fan.
but I know there are other referees I think that have
Yeah,
supports for particular clubs, and so that
which
gets
is
avoided.
natural. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, this is worrying. I mean, I was particularly disappointed because if this video is true, I mean, it's highly damaging to the people's perception of referees. It sort of only encourages this sort of idea that referees have an agenda, that they're biased towards certain clubs or against certain clubs, and are more generous insofar as how they treat other clubs. And understandably, since this news has come out, a lot of people have been going back and analysing all the games in which he's been official and suggesting there've been some controversial decisions. So it's just unfortunate at a time when I think refereeing generally is getting a bit of a bad press, that we're having to ride this storm as well. I mean, I don't know if you've got anything to say about it at all, Adam.
It's like it is upsetting as someone who loves refereeing that everyone seems to jump on and the bad things that referees do is um is the most dominant story about refereeing. Like, we never get stories like this about us, doing giving a fantastic advantage which leads to a goal or something like that, in
No.
the way players don't. And I know players face scrutiny on both sides of the coin, and rightly so. But referees never seem to get praised for performance in the same manner. And I do find that side of it disappointing. I understand that there's a moral obligation upon referees that they that they do need. I don't know. I feel like people expect referees to be like vicars, basically, like completely morally what's the word, pure.
Yeah.
And I think that perception is misplaced because referees are just human beings like anybody else, and I think it's important we understand the humanity. I mean, I think when I watched it, or I didn't really watch it, I kind of watched 20 seconds of it and I was like, it just sounds like he's talking nonsense, to be honest. And like, not to disparage what he said or anything, like, I just wasn't interested in watching it because I felt like I knew the consequences of this video being released. Um, I don't know, I just felt like it seems like to me it's a hurt human who needs, somewhere to express himself in a different way in a safe place actually.
And
And
I really agree with that. And obviously, if any is there any truth to any of these sort of allegations, then you would like to think that the PGMOL have got a sort of, and I'm sure they do have their duty of care towards their referees,
absolutely.
because they would appear to be, on the basis of the stories as reported and the allegations suggest, some underlying problems that need to be addressed. I think it does serve as a, I think it serves as a reminder to people about, you do have to be very careful about what you put on social media.
Mm,
I mean, lots of companies will employ people and have social media uh, code within their contracts of employment for their employees, just to remind them that if you are employed by a company and you were to go on social media and make some fairly unpleasant or controversial remarks, there are consequences for that.
I
And
mean, essentially, we're all public figures these days, aren't we?
yeah,
And
100%.
that's kind of the thing we have to remember. And the litmus test is, would a politician get away with this? And if not, I mean, just the consequences of the riots have shown that, right? Like the judgments that have come down on the people who just posted about stuff. And they've rightly so been held to account for that information. I don't like. I'm a little bit disappointed in the double standard of everyone's piling on top of David, and I'm not defending what he's done, and I'm not defending allegedly what he's done, and I'm not defending the comments he's made out on what he said in any way, shape, or form. But added to that, like no one seems to be talking about what was said to him to make him feel that angry about what was said to him. And no one seems to be talking about the behavior of everyone who was involved in that situation. And by everyone, I mean, the abuse he faced personally. And I've been in situations, I've not been in many situations. I don't want to make myself seem like I'm a Premier League referee here, but I have been in situations where I've been faced with the challenge of a Premier League manager. And it's not a nice situation to be in when
Yeah.
they're like they have a certain, and not all of them, but the one I came across, and I think generally this colloquially when I spoke to other officials is a backed up opinion. Um, they have a way of getting to you that no one else seems to. Like grassroots, it's a pain. Like in grassroots, it's not nice to kind of have everything questioned, but there's something about the way elite managers do it that really does get to you. And whenever I think about that incident that happened to me, I still get a little bit frustrated and a little bit I clam up a little bit about it, and it wasn't nice just because of it's a constant barrage and it is non-stop and you can't reason and there's no space for actual mutual respect and discussion in that situation. And I think when someone goes through a situation like that, I think you're going to have it's going to create feelings of discomfort inside you. I still have feelings of discomfort inside me from that situation. Um, Granted, there is a way to go about dealing with those feelings, and there is a way to go about discussing that, and there is a way professionally to handle it. Those things clearly haven't happened here, but I do think that, that there is a double standard in a report in here, that that the manager in question seems almost saintly and seems justified in his actions compared to that of the referee. And granted, I don't know whether Jurgen Klopp maybe got fined, whether David reported him or whatever for foul and abusive language or whatever, and that may well have happened, and he may well have faced his justice, and rightly so. But I do still think this should also bring up a much deeper, wider conversation about the humanity of officials and and the fact that it isn't fair that we put officials in those positions to have to face that abuse, and that abuse shouldn't exist because it clearly does create a long-term effect on officials.
Yeah.
And I've
I think, yeah, I agree. I think you're right to say that it shouldn't just all be about, what he said and done. It should provoke a wide discussion about, the things that assistants and officials have to endure because, we've said this many times before. You wouldn't allow anybody in your workplace in an office to talk to you
mm,
and shout at you the way it just seems to be the accepted norm in football.
yeah.
And there's no reason why it should be any different. It's still a workplace for them. They're
I mean,
employees.
if you look at the image from the game upon which apparently this video is the topic of, if you took the still image of that discussion that's happening between the manager and the referee, and you was to take that off of the football pitch and put it into any other situation in the world, you'd look at that photo and go, that's like that's not right. Like the person in the wrong here is clearly the manager. Uh, in that moment in time, the
Yeah.
consequences, obviously, we can't excuse the result of that. But I just think, retention of referees is something that everyone in the world is struggling with. Um, and I
But
just think this highlights the real consequences, the human level consequences of the abuse that referees can face, and the lack of resilience. And if you find someone who doesn't have the resiliency that they might need. And this is like at the magnified level, right? Like I'd never expect this to happen in grassroots at this kind of intensity, but the intensity at which that happened, I'm not sure I'd have the resiliency to deal with that. And I'm a really resilient person. Um, and so I do think yeah, I think that's kind of all wanted to say.
The one other thing it made me think about is obviously there's been this sort of a lot of chat recently from the refereeing body here about we need to encourage more former players to get involved in refereeing. They understand the game better, blah blah blah. But it does present problems. I mean, let's just take as an example. Let's say the Premier League football retires, and he's encouraged to go up the sort of footballing refereeing ladder, and they get to the top. I mean, how is somebody employable? Let's take a player that's maybe played for 3 Premier League clubs in their career,
Mm,
and then they become a sort of top flight referee. That would make them ineligible for so many games in a season if you
mm.
simply took them out of games involving those clubs, or even. I mean, you can imagine if you'd had a former Arsenal player, for example, become a referee. It wouldn't just be a case of saying, "Well, you can't be a referee for Arsenal games." There'd be
Tottenham,
people saying you can't
West
be
Ham.
you can't referee Spurs, you can't do
Mm,
Chelsea games.
mm.
Um,
You can't referee any teams that you played
yeah,
against. Yeah, you're right. You're
it's
right.
not without its complications. This idea that we're
No,
going
it's
to
not.
bring in all these former players.
They successfully navigated it in rugby, didn't they? Glenn Jackson, he got on a quick pathway to refereeing, and he ended up being the only professional ex-professional player who's refereed, I think, at a World Cup. I don't know
Right.
how they negotiated it with him, but then it's just maybe rugby is just a different environment,
Yeah.
and it is a slightly more objective game than football. So yeah. Yeah, anyway, I suppose we all await the results of the
Yeah, I mean he's been
uh,
suspended by UEFA as you might expect because he's a referee for
hmm.
international stuff. But
I
my
don't
my fun,
sorry, I
yeah,
was
go
just
on.
gonna say I don't subscribe to the notion that this proves referees are biased in any way, shape, or form. I think it shows that referees are human, and I think it shows that but you know as well as I know, referees, we can take that kind of thing, that kind of abuse that happens to us, and then we can still go out and make sure that we have a professional, even when we're faced with those people again, we have a professional approach. In fact, maybe even more of an entrenched professional approach, because you understand that there could be a higher level of scrutiny against you on that when you go up against those people again.
I
So,
agree with that, but it doesn't help, does it? Because there is obviously uh, a proportion of football fans that just genuinely believe that referees are biased and unfair. And I've said before, I find that deeply resentful. I mean,
hmm,
I sort of referee leagues where I know players and all sorts of teams. I played for various teams in the past,
hmm,
and there's still a perception. So several years after I stopped playing, that I'm going to favour one team or another. And I think like most referees, I pride myself on trying to be as independent as I possibly can. In fact, as you just said, sometimes going overboard
hmm,
because you're frightened of being perceived in any
yeah,
way. And this is damaging. I mean, the bottom
hmm,
line is if these allegations turn out to be true, it's damaging to the refereeing world. But listen, let's see what happens. Um, Before we finish off the podcast with just some nice correspondence we've had, one quick VAR story just to prove that I'm right about how it should be abolished. Did you see on Monday night Alexander Isak's goal that was
no,
disallowed
I didn't.
when he was playing for Sweden?
No, I did not.
So, um, UEFA have had to come out and admit that there was a major VAR error on Monday night because Alexander Isak scored a goal. There was a VAR review of it, and VAR drew the lines and said he was offside.
Right.
Unfortunately, they drew the lines at the wrong time in the game. They drew the lines in the build-up when he was not involved in play, and I mean, I can't quite understand how this happened because when you actually look at it in real time
Hmm.
and you can see the lines on the pitch, I mean, he's miles on side. So, how two people, I think it was two Polish officials in the VAR room, um, drew the lines and both said no, he's offside. I have
Hmm.
no idea. But anyway, just another example for me that even with VAR, we're still getting things wrong. So,
Yep.
time
And
to bin it.
yeah, well, that's your opinion. Yeah, and just I didn't see that at all, but these things happen, don't they? I mean, I think that's personally, I think that's more damaging to the role of referees, mistakes like that, than what we was talking about previously. But that's by the
But
by.
then the whole point is VAR is meant to eliminate
Yes, I
this
understand. I
human
understand.
error,
I
and
understand
we're just
everything.
compounding it. Um, just before we sign off with some messages we've had, I was just going to say I'd be really interested, by the way, for people listening to message in and let us know what they're getting paid in their local leagues. I'm quite interested about the variations around the country as to
You're
how
gonna put in a
much.
transfer request, are you?
Well, I might have to move if there's more money to be had in other parts of the country.
I can totally see you flying to New York for games just to get your Amex points up.
The English referee flies in. Be great. I'd love it. So finally, I think we've had some very nice correspondence from our lovely law listeners, which is always so nice. But I just wanted to share with you a little story that reminds us about the international reach our podcast has. And I kind of knew already about international reach because Adam and I have been in discussions lately with possible alliances we're going to forge with various refereeing brands. And as part of that, we have to do our research and look at our listenership. And we discovered that we're listened to in dozens of countries around the world.
Yeah,
Our
I
biggest
got
listenership in the UK.
I got a message from Argentina, and
Oh, really?
yeah, someone from Argentina listens and uses the podcast to help train referees and talk about
Oh,
refereeing.
yeah, I saw that message.
Yeah, it was
That was
so
a lovely
sweet.
message.
I was looking for it. I couldn't find it, but oh, just so beautiful. What a lovely thing to let us know about, which is lovely. And then just
And
in the loyal listener community, we've got like so many varied nationalities, which is lovely. But yeah, United Kingdom, United States, Australia, Ireland, Canada, they're our top ones. Denmark, Malta, New Zealand,
yeah,
Sweden.
I can't remember. It's like 30, 40 countries around the world we've got listenership. And
65.
65 countries. I
Mm.
mean, there we go. But what a lovely story. So David, who refereed with us in Rome, who was refereeing with me in Buenos
He's
Aires,
awesome. I
and
miss
he's
David.
a lovely
Such a lovely
guy,
fella.
and he referees at a really high level up in the US. And he was telling me a story about how he got a message from somebody who had listened to the podcast and said, "You got a shout out on the Red or Yellow podcast," and it was just so lovely. The idea that on the other side of the world, there are people listening to our podcast, and it provokes them into sort of sending a message to someone, and yeah, it was really lovely. The message you were talking about from the Argentinian person was a lady called Carla Gonzalez. So we give her a shout out. Thanks for listening, Carla. She says that she's a refereeing coach and she helps them to communicate in English. And she very sweetly says, "Your podcast is amazing and it's useful for me at
Oh,
the moment to teach them. And that's why I follow the pod." And so
oh, well, you're more than
messages like
welcome.
that uh, really make us feel that this whole thing's worthwhile. So thank you very much for those of you who listen. Please join our WhatsApp communities, follow us on our social media channels. And I think that's probably enough for this week, Adam.
I think you're right. I've got a plane to catch,
And
which is
I've
rare.
got
It's me who's got a
TV
plane
to
to
watch.
catch. That's the first time, isn't it? It's not Ed.
And I'm going off to watch I'm a Celebrity because that's obviously my brother-in-law's program. So
It
I'm
is.
being
Giving it the
very
support.
supportive
Good.
and I'm going to go and watch that. Lovely to
Fantastic.
see you, Adam.
Absolutely the same, my friend.
See you soon. Take
Can't wait.
care.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for making it to the end of another episode of Red or Yellow. You're clearly a very fit listener. May I gently remind you to like and subscribe to this podcast in your podcast app. That way, when we release a new episode, our meandering chats will magically appear on your phone. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, please feel free to share it with one of your friends when they ask for a podcast recommendation. Word of mouth goes a long way, and no more so than yours. Don't forget, you can get 10% off any refereeing equipment that you might need if you head to processports.com and use the code RedOrYellow10 at checkout. Thank you so much for listening this week. And don't forget to follow us on social media. It's at Red or Yellow Pod. And please feel free to send us any questions that you may have via DM, or you can email redoryellowpod@gmail.com. We cannot wait to speak to you again very, very soon. Ciao, ciao.